Hey, and welcome to the Difference Maker Revolution podcast. And this week you've got Steve and Janine and Brad and myself. And we're in the pub now. We've had at least 6 pints each, so just don't know what's going to happen. You just don't know who's going to say what. But what we are talking about is profitable pricing, your key to success. So profitable pricing, that's a mouthful for an Irish fan, Janine.
I say, especially after 6 points. After six pints, right?
6 pints of Guinness.
Profitable pricing.
Profitable
for
pricing.
Portrait photographers. How many more PHs can we add in there?
So, Janine, what is profit? To start with, we need to know that before we figure out how we're going to price for it.
What is profit? You want my fun definition and not the boring numbers one? It's money in my pocket.
Beer money.
It's money. It's money to go shopping and spend things. I'm not the biggest shopper in the world, except for when it comes to fall decorations. I gotta say, I've been spending a lot of money, probably unnecessarily, on fall decorations this year because it makes me happy. But anyways, profit is
walk outside and gather leaves.
We don't have fall in Florida, Steve. It's just green year round.
Oh,
so right. Fall decorations just make me happy. It makes me long for cooler weather that I never get. But anyways, no, profit. It's the money. It's the money after the sale. The what you get to keep.
Just tell us a little bit more about what you mean get to keep, because I see a lot of people get confused as to what profit actually is, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes they think they have their sale, their cost of goods, right? That they pay when they buy the albums, folio boxes, wall art, whatever that is, and what's left is their profit.
Yeah, they forget about everything else running, don't they? They forget about the sales tax that comes out. They forget about the overhead, what they have to pay to keep the lights on, their insurance, any team members they might have, the electricity, the alarm, the garbage, the water. There's a lot that goes into keeping your doors open.
And I blame people like Steve for this, the accountants who came up with, for some reason, want to call something gross profit and something net profit, right? And then people get confused.
It makes sense. Gross profit makes sense. Like, come on.
It's gross.
It confuses people.
The word confuses me. Why put gross on something that's not gross? I don't know.
Well, it is.
That disgusting money.
I didn't invent accounting. I just learned what other people created.
But somebody did. Some accountant invented it at some stage, right?
I think the one thing people forget when it comes to profit is that they need to pay themselves a wage or a salary, and then the business is supposed to make a profit over and above that. And I think a lot of people mistake profit to be their salary, whereas in a business, the business you need to think of it as another person that you're working with, and so that person, which is the business, needs to make a profit and needs to be paid, and so do you as the owner. And I think that that's a chunk of where people make a mistake, is that they're not factoring in that the business needs to make a profit over and above what the business should be paying you as an owner for the efforts that you're putting in. And I think that's one chunk. But then, of course, all the stuff that Janine was talking about, which was all those other expenses, the garbage and the fall, whatever they are.
That's what I'm doing with my profits. I'm spending.
You need to buy some of these things to dress up your window, right?
Yes.
To give your studio a fall feel, even though you're in Florida, right? It will all be tax deductible, Janine. Don't you worry.
Yes, it is all tax deductible.
But I think that's a common thing that I find that people don't consider, that the business needs to make a profit over and above what the owners get paid to.
So, Janine, I'm really confused now, because Steve has told us that you need to get paid as the owner and the business needs to make a profit for itself, and they're separate entities, right? So how then do you, as the business owner, get to spend your profit on decorations for Halloween?
For fall
For fall?
For fall.
We haven't gotten to Halloween yet. That's October. I'm not that crazy. I will wait till October 1st to pull out the Halloween decorations. This is the fall decorations.
Fall? You have decorations just for fall, for autumn.
Oh, those are personal decorations for my home. So when I did my profit distribution, that's what I chose to spend it on this month because I needed some happiness in my life, Brennan. It's been a stressful few months. So that's what I chose to do. I wanted to decorate my house and have some fun with the kids. So the profit that I paid myself out of the business, that's what we did. We went and we bought things and we decorated the house. And that was how we had some fun. We made pumpkin bread and I don't know, we just did some fun things.
So what's a profit distribution then?
Well, Ronan, that sounds like a question you should answer yourself. You're the profit first master. You'll say it way better than me. I just say it as giving myself money to spend. Which is how I look at it in a layman's terms, is that twice a month. Oh, now you're changing it, but I've gotten to the habit of twice a month. We distribute profit from the business to me personally as a distribution. And then that we use over and above what I pay myself. So I pay myself, excuse me, that's my when I do payroll for the entire team, I run my payroll through that as well. Right. And so I get paid every other week, just like every other team member, and I run through payroll. And then twice a month, I do a distribution of profit from the business to my personal account. Okay.
So, Brad, we're supposed to be talking about pricing and it's linked to profit now that we know what profit is and distributions and all that sort of stuff, that great stuff. We're not going to talk any more about that. So how do you price for profit, Brad? How do you sit down and say, right, so I need to price what we do at this in order to make a profit?
It's a great question, Ron. I mean, for years, I never had that thought process. I think for years I did it backwards, in the sense that I would price something, I would then, we would then take out all costs, and then we'd be left with the profit at the end. Which I think is what the vast majority of business owners do, especially photographers do, is they'll price it at whatever they think it's worth and not put strategy in there. And at the end, it's, we're left with, X% of profit at the end. So really the better thing to do is kind of reverse engineer that and go that from, go it the other way, because obviously pricing impacts heavily on how much revenue your business is going to make, and then ultimately what your gross and net profit is going to be. So then you have to figure out, what percentage of profit you want to get from your business. You got to know what your costs are. So I have to know what your monthly costs are, your cost per client. And then you have to know, and that's by cost per client, I don't mean like cost of goods. I mean, what's it cost you as a business to host that person in your studio? What's it costing staff? What's it costing rent, in heat, in internet, and all those other nonsense costs? How much does it actually cost to actually have that client with you? And then add cost of goods in there, and then you actually know what that ultimate liability is, and then price appropriately based on your profit. I can't give the real boring answer, which I've given in the past. It gets thrown around a lot, or just 5x your cost. 5x your cost, or 5x your cost of goods, and you'll be fine. You might be, but there's a whole load of nuance in that, because you're not going to 5x a print price, because then you could be charging like a few quid for a print. that's not good business sense. But you have to price. Well, yeah, I'm about to say you have to price to profit, don't you? You have to price for profitability. You have to think of the end result in mind. You have to go from what ultimately it's that profit first of how much you want to get paid for your business. And ultimately, when you know how much you want to get paid for operating your studio, then you can develop a pricing strategy. I think that's the best way. I think going at it from the front end is just hoping. It's much easier and better when you reverse engineer it.
Just to unwrap a little bit of what you just said. So you said that like a multiplier of 5 is a minimum, really, and depending on what the price of the product that you're going to sell is, right? Because I see a lot of photographers trying to operate on a 3 multiplier, for things like wall art, and I've never seen that work. That's just a profit at the end, but I understand what you say then. Obviously, if you're selling them at a 10 by 8 print, like it's going to be way more than 5 times, right? Which you mentioned there about that you have to know how many clients you're going to serve as well. Just talk to us a little bit about that.
Ultimately, volume matters, and volume especially matters when you have fixed costs. So your variable cost in terms of your cost per goods, that's variable depending on actually getting a client in front of you. But if you have rent rates, you've got bills to pay, they're fixed. And ultimately, the more clients you can get in, that's going to reduce that fixed cost per client. And it's important to know what those numbers are, because then that allows you to build a business and build an actual marketing plan around what you actually want to earn for your business, or rather what your business has to do in turnover for you to get paid. It's what Steve said before. Loads of photographers, not just photographers, loads of business owners don't know the difference between like business and personal income. And ultimately, your business has to get paid first, so that it can then pay you. And most people just take their payment out of the business. And then ultimately, at the end of the year, the business has made profit, but then there's no profit. There's no cash left to pay the tax. And it's because they've not left that profit in the business, and they've not been paying themselves a wage, and a whole host of other reasons.
Did you know what? We're all first boring after 6 pints. Like, what were we like before we even had a few pints?
Well, Ronan, it's funny because Brad said something, and it's what I've always loved about running a photography studio is the profit, because our costs are fixed, right? For the most part. Like, I know, I'm just going to throw out round even numbers. Let's say it takes $10,000 a month to run your studio, your overhead, everything like that. All those costs that you just can't change. It's fixed, right? And if you're doing the 5X number, again, for easy math, like Brad said, so you know how many clients you need to bring in to your studio in a month to cover that $10,000. At the cost of goods that we operate at, everything after that is essentially pure profit. I mean, it's amazing. And I don't think photographers think about it that way. Once you hit that number of clients that meets your fixed cost, everything after that, it's essentially like printing money. And I think people stop themselves short. I need 15 clients this month, right? But if you do 20, those extra 5, it's all money in your bucket. It's all profit because your fixed costs have already been paid. They don't change again. It's done. It's paid for. And everything else is just pure profit. We are very lucky. I mean, I have friends that run retail establishments that run on a 20, like they just, what do they call it? They just double, like whatever they pay for the cost of something, they just double it. I mean, they're running on such low margins. We don't, and so it might take you have a certain number of clients it takes to come in the door to cover all your overhead, which could be pretty high. I know Steve and I have talked about this. When he had his studios, his overhead was very high. But once he covered that, book 5 more clients, holy bejesus. I mean, it's, and I feel like so many people we talk to stop short of what can make their business truly great because they don't think about that factor.
Yeah, we the punching power of our business model is very, very powerful.
Yeah.
And it's based on real revenue projections. Like my studio, it like competes on real revenue basis with other businesses in different industries that turn over millions, because they're on 5 to 10% gross margins, not even net margins. So yeah, our margins are very, very fat. He made a great point there, about photographers wanting 15 clients, but if you did 20, you'd earn more money. We're greedy, Janine. That's a trait we share. That's how we see it. We work to death for cash. But some photographers might want a lifestyle. They might not want to work themselves to death, and they might want a happy lifestyle business, and they're happy with the business paying them a good wage.
Okay, but I'm starting out, right? And I haven't a clue now how to get started with this. Like how do I even figure out? Because I see online, I see photographers offering all the digitals for $300, right? And what you guys are telling me is that's probably not sustainable. So, should I just make a list of all the photographers in my area and look at what they're charging and sort of say, where do I fit in there and figure out is that pricing for success? Is that what you would do?
Now, first of all, it's jarring hearing an Irishman say bucks, $300. It's off. It's off-putting. That's an American term. Maybe Australian, because you Aussies operate in dollars as well. You might say bucks. You can get away with it. But for us Europeans, we can't. Oh. Anyway, but aside from that, yeah, no, please don't look at what your competition are doing, because your competition don't know what they're doing. And you don't want to take advice from people who don't know what they're doing, because then you just end up in this flywheel of having no idea what you're doing and not getting anywhere, which is a problem we see that a lot of photographers face, because they take business advice from people who are running terrible businesses, but might appear like they're running really great businesses. So please don't look at your neighbor down the street. I think, well, he's only charging X. I have to charge Y. I also don't think that because his work is at X standard, or it's the same standard of work that you're photographing, pricing has nothing to do with the quality of work you create as a photographer, but it has everything to do with your own confidence, your belief in what you are doing, and how you're going to shape and change people's lives. Because if you have a true impact on a client, you can charge more money for it. And that's how you price, or that's how you get your worth and understand your value in pricing. It's not based on how established you are as a photographer, how many years of experience you have, how many awards you've won. It's the difference you make to your clients. And a lot of those photographers will price based on photography work, how good the photography is, and think they can't charge more than the person down the street because they're at a similar level. You can. It's nothing to do with photography quality. It's all about how the impact you make to your clients. So I wouldn't even look at other photographers when I'm deciding how to price. I would pick out products that I love. So you have to sell things that you enjoy, that you love, because you have to steal some passion somewhere. I'd figure out what the cost base is, and then I'd put a minimum 5 to 6x on that, and then use that as a starting point. Obviously, if it's prints, I wouldn't. I'd figure out what your more expensive items are first, and then you can figure out what your print price is.
All right. So we have a client, Steve, in Difference Maker Revolution this week, who did that, right? So she took her products and she multiplied it by this 5, and she nearly had a heart attack on the spot.
This is something that I've been waiting to bring up, because I think pricing for profit, in order to make profit, you also have to be able to sell something to make a profit. And so all these numbers are fantastic, but you then have to look at and Brad's right, you have to find something that you love. But sometimes when you multiply that thing that you love by 5, I find a lot of photographers have displays up that they've never sold because they don't have the confidence to ask for that money. And in order to, part of, I think, pricing for profit means that you are selling product at a price that you're comfortable in asking for, because there's no profit in something you're not selling. You have to be able to sell it, right? So there's got to be that balance. What I loved about when I went to Brad's studio is that they chose that product that gave them the right margin for what they were comfortable in selling. And the labs sometimes will tell you, oh, your work deserves this, whiz bang, who's he, what's it type finish. But it's got to be something that once you multiply by 5, you're able to sell. You've got to understand too that from a client's perspective, they're not going to be able to tell the difference between a metal print and an acrylic print, or because for them it's just a shiny print. They're not going to be able to tell the difference between every laminate that's available, and they're not picking it up off the wall to look at the back in most cases. So I think you need to find a balance and then work towards, as you build your confidence, absolutely have that A class number 1 type product in your mind, but you have to work towards it, because unless you can confidently ask for that money, then it's not going to be a profitable product. You have to sell it first. And in a lot of cases, I'm seeing studios with things that I know just don't sell. Clients don't buy that sort of thing. And so you're much better off removing it and filling your studio with stock that your clients will want to buy. What was your question, Brandon? Sorry.
I think you've answered it. I think you've answered it. So this pricing thing then is not something I can do just around numbers. You know, it's got to be around, it's got to be around understanding how I feel with my confidence as to what my client is going to buy from me.
That's right. And I think the other mistake photographers make is that they make their pricing very complex. So a lot of studios that I go into, I've been in this industry for way too many years. And a lot of the times they hand me a price list, I have no idea how to work it out. They're charging different prices for different frame molds. If the thickness of the frame mold is different, then it's a different price. Depending upon how many overall inches, then they'll work and calculate how much the frame's going to be. In my world, I like to keep it simple for the client, so then they can keep their decisions to a minimum. So I think part of profitable pricing needs to be to make it simple for the client, so then they can make a decision, because if they can't make decisions, then you're blocking them from even buying. So even though you may have your numbers right, you're then limiting what your clients are buying because you're making it too complex. In my studios, we ran with the premise that we wanted to group similar price things together. And, you know, what I noticed, you know, we used to fall to this too. Every inch was a different price. But what I saw was that most of, like, if we're selling a 1620 frame print or a 20 by 24, 30 by 40, the price difference between the smallest and the large was maybe $50, $60. Bucks. I'm allowed to say bucks. 50, $60. And so when you're multiplying it by 5, really we used to price for the most expensive one and group that together, because it's almost like the fashion industry. You know, just because I lost, you know, two sizes in my pants doesn't mean I'm going to get a cheaper price, right? So we were grouping them together to keep it simple. And what that did was take away clients saying, oh, if I go down a size, how much is that? If I go down another size, how much is that? So I think part of profitable pricing needs to be your strategy in how you develop your pricing, because that eliminated a lot of haggling in our studio when we did that, and it became very simple. So I think part of profitable pricing is understanding your cost of doing business, understanding your cost of goods sold, exactly what Brad and Janine have said. But there's also, Brad hinted at it, that you have to factor in your confidence level when you multiply it by 5, and then you have to work on making it simple for the clients to understand. So then they're not having to make lots and lots of decisions where they could have just made one decision.
And you also said don't fall for shiny object syndrome, right?
Yeah, the labs love to talk you into the latest and greatest that some superstar photographer is doing. And I've worked with these superstar photographers, and they're not selling those things that the labs are telling you should be buying. They did it as it's almost like, you know, the fashion designers, you know, design the unwearable dress. And it's just to shock people on the catwalk. And a lot of the labs are doing the same thing. You know, they're creating these products that really you're not selling any, and if any, you might sell 1 or 2 a year because you've pushed it. You're far better off, especially when you're starting, to pick a product that you're comfortable with, that you know clients are going to want to buy and that they can relate to.
Ronan.
Yes, Brad.
I've got a little bit of a platform. Do you have any products you'd like me to sell? I'm happy to sell my soul. and flog some of your products for a nice return, like all these other photographers are doing. Yeah, you interested at all?
So tell us, Brad, what's your following?
What's my following? Well,
how many followers do you have?
So it's a couple of thousand, a few thousand. I get people listening to this podcast. We get a few thousand listeners every month. I can leverage them. You're not allowed to leverage them. It looks bad if you leverage for your own business, but I can leverage for your business on your behalf.
Like your wingman.
Yeah. I'm your wingman. My folio boxes.
Well, that was one thing I was going to bring up, because when you were talking about, the 8x10, your smaller prints, your 8x10s, I used to price them based on when they're packed in my folio box and how many would be in the folio box, and then multiply the folio box plus the printing, all the mats and everything that go with it, the packaging that comes with it, and then multiply that by 5, and then work back to what an 8x10 should be. So then that way, I'm coming back to a half reasonable price for my 8x10 or 5x7. We never sold 5x7s, but back to an 8x10. And again, that was that price thing where if they wanted a 5x7's in a box, which is a what type of box? What size, Ronan? We never sold it, so I don't remember. An 8x10 box, isn't it?
Yes.
Because the 8x10 is going to 11x14 box. We used to sell it for the same price because it's just a smaller box. And when you think about it, what's the value of what you do? The value is in that photograph that is melting somebody's soul. It doesn't change if it's a 5x7 or an 8x10. So we sold them at the same price to keep it consistent. Not saying that's what everybody should do, but that's what we did. And I think to come back to your 8x10s, work out how you want to sell it. And we prefer to sell them in a folio box. And we used to package it up beautifully. So the package, the box and everything, we had to calculate into that cost and then work backwards to what your single 8x10 need to be to cover it.
All right. So it sounds like to me that when you're creating your pricing, that you need to kiss it.
Yes. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple, stupid.
The KISS theory always works.
Has anyone sort of, I see price, I hate calling them lists, but they are lists where people write it down, right? And they have all their pricing worked out. And I see people who've got 964 items on their price list. And then I see people who've got, 7. So is there any thoughts on that?
Give me 7. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Clients don't want a lot of choice. They don't want a lot of decisions. They're pretty much decisioned out by the time you get to the price, because they're going through this roller coaster of emotion. And really, once you're delivering the price to them, they don't need to then have to go through a whole other process of decisions just to say yes at the end. Because the more decisions you have to make, the more likely they are to then opt out.
Alrighty, so all you guys have to do to get help with your pricing, to make sure that you can kiss your price list, is click on the link below and book your call to have a conversation with us about becoming an Inner Circle member. It'll fast track your success. That's it from us. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.